Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're digging into one of the world's oldest industries. We're talking mining to uncover a really cool story about a totally new way of thinking. It's all about how changing the way people work together can be just as revolutionary as the technology they build.
So, have you ever wondered about this? You've got these massive, powerful industries with decades of history, but that very size and history can make them super slow to change. It's a real paradox. So how do you break that cycle? How do you bring in game-changing ideas without grinding the whole operation to a halt? That's the big question we're tackling today.
You see, for the longest time, the industrial world kind of ran on a pretty standard playbook. Be secretive, stay in your lane, and keep things purely transactional. Companies kept their cards glued to their chest, and a deal was pretty much over once the product was delivered. But a new model is starting to take over, and it completely flips that script. It's all about being transparent, working together, and building real long-term partnerships.
To really get what this shift is all about, we're going to look at a company that is right in the middle of it all, actively tearing down those old walls.
And that company is Glencore Technology. Now, they're a unique group that develops and sells some seriously advanced equipment for the mining industry. But their real innovation, the thing that makes them different, isn't just in the machines. It's in their whole philosophy that the best results come from treating your clients not as customers, but as teammates on the same mission.
Their sales director, Scott Martin, really nails it with this quote. It gets right to the core of everything they do. And, it's such a simple idea, but it has huge implications. When you stop hoarding information and you start sharing it freely, you solve problems way faster, you build better systems, and really, everybody wins.
Okay, so that's the big idea. But what does this partnership philosophy actually look like in the real world? Let's break down how they actually put it into practice.
Well, the fundamental difference is this. They don't just drop off a piece of equipment and say, good luck. They actually embed themselves with their partners to tackle a problem from the very beginning all the way to the end. And honestly, often for a long time after, it's a complete shift from just a transaction to a truly shared mission. And look, this isn't just some vague, feel-good concept. It's a really structured process. It's all built on constant communication. By working together right from the get-go and setting clear milestones, they create these built-in off-ramps. Chances to pause and ask, hey, is this actually working for us? This stops projects from going off the rails and makes sure everyone is laser-focused on the same goal, actively breaking down those info silos that so often kill innovation.
All right, let's see this whole thing in action with our first case study. It involves a company called Hudbay Minerals, and they were facing this massive environmental and logistical headache at a new project in the United States.
So here's how things used to be done. Hudbay would mine their ore, process it into what's called a concentrate, and then they hit the biggest hurdle. They had to load all that material onto a massive ship and send it clear across the ocean to Asia for the final step, smelting. Just think about it, the fuel, the time, and the absolutely enormous carbon footprint.
So, naturally, they looked for a better way. And here's Chris Marion, Hudbay's manager of metallurgy, explaining their choice. They looked at a bunch of different options, but one technology from Glencore Technology really stood out, not just because it was cheaper, but because it was way, way better for the environment. That ESG front he mentions, that's the key. The solution was something called the Albian process. Now, to put it simply, this technology lets them completely skip the overseas smelter. Instead of using tons of heat, it uses this sophisticated chemical process, kind of like a chemical bath, to pull the pure metal directly out of the concentrate, right there at the mine. And the new process? It's a total transformation. It's incredibly streamlined. They mine, they process, and they produce pure copper all in one place. That entire step of shipping everything across the ocean, it's just gone.
So the result is simple, but it is absolutely profound. By working together in this partnership to adopt the new tech, they completely eliminated a massive source of carbon emissions. It's a huge win for the company's bottom line and an even bigger win for the planet.
Okay, on to our second case study, this time with a company called Agnico Eagle. Now, this story is less about the final outcome and more about the nitty-gritty, the how this collaboration works day to day to take the fear and risk out of trying something brand new.
So they wanted to test a new flotation technology. which is basically a cool method of using air bubbles to separate valuable minerals from waste. But they didn't just install a full-scale version and cross their fingers. No, they started small. Glencore Technology brought a pilot-scale rig right to the mine site. A student, Mai Ouellette, ran the first phase of tests. Then, using her data, project metallurgist Jorge Hanawa-Kuri took over for Phase 2 to fine-tune everything. It's all about taking these smart, small steps to build confidence.
And here's Mai, the metallurgist who ran that first phase, and she points to the secret ingredient. It was the total transparency between her team on the ground and the experts at Glencore Technology that made it all click. They shared everything, the good results, the bad, all of it.
And what that did was create this incredibly powerful feedback loop. When something didn't work quite right, both teams were on it, together. Glencore's experts could even suggest tiny adjustments to the equipment based on real-time feedback from the people actually running it. They weren't two separate companies anymore. They were one single problem-solving unit.
So when you look at these two stories, Hudbay and Agnico Eagle, you realize they aren't just one-off successes. They actually give us a repeatable blueprint for how pretty much any legacy industry can get better and faster at innovating.
So here it is, the blueprint. It all starts with partnership, treating everyone like a real team member, not just a client. That foundation lets you have total transparency, which then makes it possible to de-risk new ideas with smaller, phased tests. By connecting the tech experts directly with the on-site teams, you make the whole thing more human, more responsive. And finally, you have to remember it's never really done. The partnership allows for continuous improvement long after the sale.
So when you take a step back, the conclusion is crystal clear. Yeah, the Albian process and the Jameson cell are amazing technologies. Of course they are. But the real breakthrough here is the collaborative, human-centered process that brings them to life. The true discovery is in innovation in how we innovate.
And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought. If this model of radical, open collaboration can work in an industry as old and as complex as mining and help solve major environmental and operational challenges, just imagine where else it could work. What other huge, difficult problems could we finally solve if we just changed the way we work together?